Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with chiropractor and success mindset coach, Dr. Victor Manzo. As a success mindful coach, certified pediatric chiropractor, three-time author, podcaster, and speaker, he is a highly motivated professional. Dr. Vic has helped hundreds of entrepreneurs learn how to create their dream life and lead a fulfilled life effortlessly through sharing principles of living in the quantum world. Before becoming a success mindset coach, he was a chiropractor for 11 years, and within the last 5 years, he was a pediatric chiropractor who became certified in the last 2 years. Enjoy this interview. Thanks for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure.
So before we get into your life as a mindset coach, I want to know how you survived COVID the last couple of years, threw everybody into a tailspin, shook everything up. How did you survive it, and how did that time period subsequently change the way that you live your life and conduct your business now?
You know, it's interesting because in the world I was in the health world at that time. I was doing coaching on the side, but I was mainly my business was chiropractic, and it was one of those things where, you know, we held on to what the vision of what we did in our community. We had to course correct a little bit because chiropractors are primary care physicians, so we were considered to be, what's this word they used? And not special, but we were able to practice and keep our business open. And it was one of those things but we did have to course correct and look at repositioning what we did and how we were going to serve people. And we looked at it in a way of what are the things that people are going to go through? What are the things that people, you know, because now all of a sudden I was a pediatric chiropractor, so it was one of those things that we looked at things and said, hey, you know what? Mostly moms are going to have to not only just try to keep up with everything else, but now they have to do homeschooling and this and that and all these other things. Stress is going to be on the rise like crazy. It's going to be overwhelmed. Kids are going to be overwhelmed. And we structured and positioned ourselves in a way to help be a lending hand to what can chiropractic do in some way, shape, or form to help them in that journey. And to be honest, when it first came down to lockdowns, I was originally in Chicago at the time with my practice, and that was one of the hardest ones that had the most severe lockdowns. And we did take a 40% hit in the beginning, but because we stayed focused on what we did, because we didn't let the fear, the worries in our head, listening to the noise and all that stuff, we bounced back pretty much to almost back to zero or back to where we were 2 months later, and we broke records the following month. So in just 3 month period of time, we broke records, and from there we thrived. One of those stories where we kept continually to thrive and grow throughout COVID, again, coming back to repositioning our vision and our purpose of what it is that we do and how we did that. Even my coaching business thrived because it was one of those things where I had 3 clients that in their journey, I mean, literally from a day before to the announcement to all of a sudden 3 days later, they didn't have a business anymore. That's kind of scary.
Wow.
Yeah. And they were like, I can't work. I can't do this. When's this going to end? They're saying 2 weeks. I'm like, it's not going to be 2 weeks. It's going to be a lot longer than that. And they're like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, here's the thing. We can freak out. You got 2 choices. You can freak out. You can get worried. You can go down that negative rabbit hole. And what is that going to do to serve you? Or we have another choice. We can course correct. What are things that you wanted to do? What are things that have been really a passion and interest to you? I mean, you'll be able to go back to business. If you want to go back to that business, you can. It eventually will come back. It's not going to stay like this forever. But you can choose something else if you want to go down that path. And like, yeah, absolutely, I need to do something. Okay, and then we did some soul seeking and some other things. And those 3 clients of mine who had literally, I had other ones that were affected, but these were 3 that literally were like shut down immediately. Going through that work, I remember I got an email like 6 months after going, I can travel anywhere in the world. A year and a half later, someone's like, I can't believe where I'm at now. Like, I never saw this happening. You know, and it's one of those things where, again, one of the messages of sharing is got to stay focused on that vision. And that's what it kind of helped me. I put that to work, and then I saw the results, and then also helping my clients do that to where it kind of makes me, no matter what, stay out of my head and stay with the vision as much as I possibly can. It's not as easy as it sounds, but it's one of those things that has really helped me hone in strongly with that, not just for myself, but also for my clients.
So let's break down what you do exactly. I'm going to put you in front of third graders at a career day, and one of them asks, what do you do for a living? How do you answer them?
I help you create your dream that you want to have in your life. As simple as that.
So talk to me a little bit about how this journey began for you. Go back to your childhood, where you were born and raised. And actually before that, when you were in the third grade, what did you see your life being? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, this is fun. Yeah, I grew up in a small Italian community called Melrose Park. It's a suburb in Chicago, and I was raised in a Roman Italian Catholic community, so guilt and shame was very well known. It was very hard conditioned into one's mind. You know, you could never. It was always, you always had to people please everyone else. That's kind of what I grew up in, and when getting to the age, third grade, I mean, I never had an idea of wanting to be a chiropractor or even now being a business coach. I never, that was nowhere near my mind. It was always, what did people think that would be an aspiring goal, right? Like, oh, maybe I'll be a lawyer, or maybe, I thought an accountant was cool at one point, or an architect at one point, right? I was always looking for getting approval, most likely from my parents, but getting that approval, what they'd be like, well, that's really great. If you do that, that's good. You're, thumbs up. And that was kind of where I was growing, even into high school. I was still looking for a career where they thought would be great. I thought about being a chef at one point and all these other things. I love to cook. I've been learning how to cook since I was 6. And, that was where, but coming from a background of also, though, of always being told what the rules are. This is how you do things. This is the way. This is all. Especially in the Roman Italian Catholic, like you don't question things. This is what it is, and that's it. That set a foundation for me to want to break rules in some way. And I don't mean that like with laws and getting myself in trouble or going to jail. None of those things. What I meant is the constructs of rules of what we think. Like, who created that law? Like, why is that, like, here in business, this is what you have to do? Yeah, who said that? Who allowed us to do that, right? So I used to question a lot of things in that way, and to really kind of break the mold in a way and this is why it has led to what I'm doing now. It's because it's like, we as humans, I can get in so many ways with this, but it's one of those things that, looking at that perspective, was just like, I from that background, it has propelled me in so many ways, because I get very frustrated when I do fall, like, for example, what's a successful chiropractor look like, right? And so I studied a lot of successful chiropractors. I became a prototype of them. Then I got very frustrated and upset because I was like, that's not me. Like, that's not who I'm supposed to be. There's the rule. I followed everything they told me, all the rules, how I'm supposed to do everything. Yeah, that's great. I got there, but it's not me. I'm not practicing the way I want to. And the same thing in coaching, right? I can go down standard business coaching principles. I have a background in business, and so forth, and I have my own business, a couple of them now. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I can teach standard business stuff that you'll get from any other business coach, but I was like, that's not me. I want to do something different. I want to change things in ways and create deep transformation for individuals. But that was kind of coming back to my upbringing on that. That's kind of what had, the other thing is my parents, I come from a blue-collar community, blue-collar family. They showed me very well what I don't want in life. And I'm very thankful for that. With financial scarcity, when it comes to every aspect, I mean, really, they portrayed it in a great way. My dad used to tell me, he said, I'm going to take you, I always used to work with my dad. He had a full-time job and a side, what we call now side hustles. And he would always say, like, I'm going to have you do hard work with me all the time. He laid carpet on the side. And sometimes that would be 12, 14-hour days. And he was just like, I want you to know what hard work is, and you can learn it, and that way you don't do it. I want to get you away from this as much as you can. So he's going to make me hate something so that I don't do it, which I'm greatly appreciative that he did, because that's what kind of propelled me to go a different route. But that's a little bit of my background. I can go deeper. I'll leave it there for now.
Yeah, no, that's good. When I come from, my dad was full-blooded Italian. He born in Brooklyn, raised in Long Island, joined the Air Force, came to Kansas City, which people usually say, how the hell did a Dimino end up in Kansas City? That's the story. But he used to take me when he was a car salesman, and he would get in there, and I would watch him. I mean, he was magical. I mean, he could sell anything. And he used to always tell his buddies there, when they would look at me and say, hey, you're going to grow up and be like your dad, he would always say, my kid's not going to be a dummy like me. He's going to go to college. And I always remember that. And it would be hard to hear that. And I didn't understand then why he would say that. I mean, I do now, but that was kind of what he wanted to do. He wanted to be like, so that's interesting. Talk to me a little bit about role models. Who have been role models for you or people you've looked up to?
In the beginning, it was family. It was my dad. That was one of them. And it's funny you bring this up, that you brought that story up. My grandfather said the same thing to me. He would always say, "Don't be a dummy like me. You're smart. Go to school." He's like, most of my family's come from, my dad's from Italy. Most of my family's from Italy. And it's funny you bring that up. It just made me think of him. But my dad was in the beginning, because he had that charisma. Your dad probably had it too. He's a great salesman. They have that charisma, that charm, that uniqueness of themselves. And people were everyone loves my dad. Like, they just love him. And growing up, I was like, man, look at that. I want to be like that. That's so cool. But then I started going to college, and as I started to discover more of myself, my role models changed a lot. I didn't have a lot of mentors. There were people I looked up to when I was growing up. I mean, they were very well-to-do. They owned businesses, or friends of my dad's and so forth. And I looked up to them at that time, but I didn't have anybody to learn from it. And that's where I started going into books. I started reading books a lot, and I started to find, different mentors I call them my mentors. I mean, some of them I never even met, but it's one of those things where they kind of, helped me along the way. And it's more, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like Viktor Frankl, the first book that totally transformed my life, Understanding My Why. Did not overcome anyhow. There was, Dr. David Hawkins, his book called Power versus Force. I read all his work. There's Wayne Dyer is like one of my biggest mentors of all time. There's Deepak Chopra. I can go down a whole rabbit hole list, but these are individuals that I was starting to get into before I got into chiropractic school. And then I started to meet mentors of mine who I got to know and meet. And these were chiropractors, but they're prolific in the industry. Like a Dr. Fabrizio Mancini. He was the president of our school at the time, and he played a really founding part in my life about vision, and I shared my vision with him, and he was the first person that actually, who was very well-to-do, looked me in the eye and said, "That is absolutely amazing." He goes, "Never give up on your vision no matter what you do." And here's a guy, I was only in the second trimester of my school. I'm having lunch with him, and he literally, he says this to me, and here's a kid who has very low self-worth. I don't really think the highest of myself. I was even shocked he was going to have lunch with me. He took me out to lunch. But in that dialogue, we were talking for over an hour. I remember his secretary yelled at him because he was late for a meeting, and I was late for lab, and you can't be late for labs. So I literally go to the lab. I'm like 10 minutes late, and like Dr. Manzo, they would dress us as doctors, and like, "Dr. Manzo, you're late for the lab. You know what that means?" I was like, "I don't know if this means anything, but I was with the president of the school having lunch. Does that kind of excuse me?" And I got away with it, but that's where, the first time someone believed in me, and then of course it's always been that I had coaches along the way that mentored me to where I'm at today.
So let me ask you this: if you have a dream tonight, you run into your younger version, and you look back on all the roads that you've gone down in your life and the wisdom that you've gained, if you could give that young version a piece of advice, what would you tell them?
The first thing I would say is believe in yourself. Just never give up on yourself. Might sound like a cliche, but for me, I needed that. I didn't believe in myself till later in life. My late 20s, literally almost when I was 30, I started to really believe in myself. That's number one. The second thing I would say is be patient. For me, I look at life now, and it's like I look at all the things I was like impatient about. It created so much stress that I didn't need. And the last thing I would say is that always know that everything works out for the greater good. So like even when things look crappy, or maybe you took a jump and leap on something, took a risk and it didn't work out, it's always something's going to always work out in your benefit. Just don't give up. Just keep moving forward. And don't let the noise of life, your mind specifically, get the best of you. I think those are the three things that, man, if I could tell myself 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, holy cow, be a game changer.
What motivates you? What is it that makes you wake up in the morning? And ultimately, at the end of the day, how do you quantify a successful day?
Making a difference. That's the biggest thing for me. I know it's My whole purpose in life is to help individuals raise their consciousness levels just to become more aware of who they are, to rediscover that greatness. And so how do I quantify that is based on it. Sometimes it's just somebody reaches out to me and says, oh my God, thanks for this reel that you did. Totally changed my life. It totally gave me a different perspective. Or it's a podcast that I was on, or a podcast I did. Those are sometimes what it is. I don't get those as often as I love to see, but those are ones. The other way I determine success is very simple and easy. I woke up. Now, some people say, well, that's not quantifiable enough. That's not, I woke up. I have a whole other day to experience a whole other life. It's a success in itself. Now, if you want to get a little more technical with it, I will choose one or two priority big things that I know that need to get done or need to be in this way or say perform from a business side. But the other thing that I used to be more business tactical like that. I'm more now like a successful day for me, honestly, is doing all the self-care stuff I need to do. Because everything else takes care of itself if I do that. Working out, doing my meditations, doing my journaling stuff, taking time for me, just to reset as much as I possibly can. I consider that to be successful when I can get those things done for the day, because that usually brings me up to showing up as a greater person, a greater version of myself, which then allows for the other things. They take care of themselves, because when I do those, I'm more focused, I'm more productive, and I'll get more work done in those ways. So that's kind of how nowadays of how I gauge things.
So what has been one of the best client responses, fan letters that you've ever gotten from your work?
In chiropractic or business coaching?
Either one.
Okay. One of them was, I've had a lot. I can go down a lot of them, but one of them, I had a shocking one. And this was a guy who was a skeptic in my office. And I'll never forget this day. It was last year in October. I'm doing x-rays in my exam room, and I literally turn around and look, and he's like, Doc, I got to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, brother. He's a very analytical guy. He's been a patient of mine for over a year. And I'm just sitting, the way he had that tone, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting. And he looks at me, and I see his eyes watering. And I'm like, I'm just sitting there. I want to say something. I'm just keeping my mouth shut. And he goes, Doc, I want to tell you, you've changed my life. He goes, please just hear me out. And this is a guy who has never been emotional ever with me, ever in any instance. And he just goes, what I can do now in my life, from 6 months ago, a year ago, he's like, I'm cycling and doing breaking, right? He's 50-something years old. He's like, I'm doing more better things now than I did in my 30s. He's like, but it's not only that. He goes, even mentally at work, you talk to me about mindset and emotional stuff, and I thought that was crazy things, but I'm starting to see it now. Like, I'm a better manager. He managed a big bank, and he's like, I'm better at this in every aspect of my life. He goes, literally from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you, because my whole life has been changed because of the work that you do here and just the conversations and your presence and who you are. And I just want to commend you for that. And I was just like, I wanted to cry, because I know this guy I remember afterwards, my wife she ran the office. She was looking and seeing the interaction, because we had a long 80-foot hallway. 80-foot space. And so she just saw the conversation, and then she goes, what happened? He goes, he looked like he was very emotional. And I was just like, I'm going to tell you something you would probably not even expect. So I told her the story. She's like, get out of here. And then my massage therapist goes, yeah, he was like praising about you in the massage room. And it's like, there's just this, he's like a whole new person. And it's blowing him by in a very good way. Sometimes those that you catch off guard are the most amazing ones. And that's probably the one that I have. I've had coaches, like I said, I've had a lot of other ones too, but that one stood out when you asked that question.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your clients, but ultimately you live your life. You're in control of who you are. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm somebody who, whatever I choose, whatever that I want to create, I'm going to create. Whatever that is, when it comes to, it's unlimited. Like it's one of those things like limitless. You can, who I am is someone who's limitless unless I put the limits on myself. And so I've started, I saw this about 5-6 years of my life where I started to change that perspective to that, to where I can just literally choose what I want to, who I am, what I want to experience, and I can make that happen. And that is something that I try to teach a lot of other people too, that you have this, you hear the story like, oh, you have this greatness within you and all this stuff. But we really have a uniqueness within us, and we really are powerful beyond we can ever measure. And it's understanding that power, understanding the beauty of who you are, understanding the uniqueness. I needed to go through an experience like that to get to this point of what I'm sharing now, because I had a low self-worth. I didn't think I was special and unique. I was just somebody. But I understand it at a very deep level to where, not only for myself, but for others. And also understanding the power. So you can create and be whoever it is you desire and choose to be. And that's someone who, for me, that's who I am at the end of the day. And, it's like the statement in the most powerful words in the English language is I am. Anything that comes after that is what you are, what you choose. And what we have to understand is that's a choice. And that's something I had to learn. And that's now I realize, who do I want to become? I was a very well-known certified pediatric chiropractor. And then all of a sudden I said, well, maybe I want to do this coaching thing. This is something I'm really passionate about. This is something that's taking things to a whole nother level and what I can do. And then I had to start realizing, there's a whole identity shift I had to do. And I'm like, you know what? I can be that if I want. I can choose to go down that path. I can be that person. And I can be just as successful, even more successful, if anything, there as I was here. And so that's who I am at the end of the day.
So, Vic, if anybody out there wants to know more about you and your services and what you do, where can they go?
My hub is my website, empoweryourreality.com. I have free resources on there, podcasts on there, access to my books. If you're a business owner and this has resonated with you and you're interested in learning more about my coaching stuff, I do a free breakthrough call where I get to know more about you and seeing if I am a person who is the one who can help you. And if I can, I'll share how I can do that. And then those who like to connect on social media, on the bottom left of my website, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Connect. I love hearing from people.
Wonderful. Dr. Vic, thank you for opening up. Thanks for your time. Have a great holiday season in 2023.
Likewise, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, medicine, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube and Spotify. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.